If you find this summary helpful, start with a free trial for detailed summaries on Apple Podcasts and Spotify using link in descriptions. Here is key point discussed in podcast Dealing with Feelings, a conversation with Dr. Marc Brackett. So what really stood out to me from Dr. Marc Brackett's story is how his childhood experiences, particularly the abuse and bullying he faced, shaped his career and research in emotional intelligence. He talks about how he had to find unhealthy ways to cope with his emotions, like eating or crying them away, because he didn't have the support or skills to deal with them in a healthy way. But then he had this transformative experience with his uncle, Uncle Marvin, who asked him how he was feeling and gave him permission to feel his emotions. This completely changed the trajectory of his life and led him to develop a framework for building emotional literacy and skills. What's really interesting is how Dr. Brackett's research shows that only 10 of people reported having any education in emotions or emotion regulation at home, and only 67 at school. This means that most people are walking around without the skills to deal with their emotions in a healthy way. And this is especially important for kids because if they don't develop these skills, they're not going to be able to regulate their emotions and achieve their goals. They're just signals that tell us to approach or avoid something. And he argues that the goal of emotion regulation is not to get rid of negative emotions, but to learn how to use all of our emotions wisely to achieve our goals. One thing that really resonated with me is how Dr. Brackett talks about the importance of permission to feel. He says that if you have a particular emotion for a long time and it's intense, and you're struggling to cope with it, that's when you need to regulate. But for the most part, the first strategy for healthy regulation is just to give yourself permission to feel. This is such a powerful mindset shift, because it allows us to approach our emotions with curiosity and openness, rather than trying to suppress or deny them. Dr. Brackett talks about how this can actually create more problems in the long run, because kids need to develop the skills to regulate their emotions in order to achieve their goals. He argues that self-awareness is actually a pathway to creating the life we need and want, and that it's not about indulging in our feelings, but about using them to achieve our goals. This is such an important nuance, because it's easy to get caught up in the idea that self-awareness is somehow selfish or indulgent. But really, it's about developing the skills to manage our emotions and achieve our goals. It's not about dismissing our kids' emotions or telling them to suck it up, but rather about acknowledging and validating their feelings. Dr. Marc Brackett talks about how the number one reason parents don't ask their kids about their feelings is fear of not knowing what to do. We've all been there, feeling like we don't know how to respond to our kids' emotions, so we just try to shut them down or distract them. But what Dr. Brackett is saying is that we need to lean into those feelings, to create a space for our kids to express themselves and to help them develop the skills to regulate their emotion. It's not about being overly permissive or letting them do whatever they want, but rather about trusting that they have the ability to navigate their emotions and make good choices. We need to trust our kids more, and we need to trust ourselves more too. Another thing that really resonated with me is the idea of role modeling. Dr. Brackett talks about how we need to model healthy self-talk and healthy emotional regulation for our kids. Our kids are watching us all the time, and they're learning from us. First, he says that there's no such thing as a bad emotion. All emotions are data, and we need to learn to listen to that data. Second, he encourages us to move from self-criticism to self-compassion. And third, he talks about the importance of having an other orientation, thinking about how others might be feeling, rather than just focusing on our own emotions.